Hi there, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick um, podcast or audio blog, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But I wanted to talk about Dana White really quick. I'm not going to give any kind of revelation that you probably haven't already heard, but I just feel like I have to say this as a fan of MMA. But there isn't any introduction. This isn't a show. This is just a quick 2 cents from a fan of mixed martial arts that saw UFC one. I'm not going to pretend I've seen every single event. Um, I'm above a casual fan in that I like the ground game, but I'm not going to pretend I'm Joe Rogan who can spot a Peruvian necktie a mile away. I'm in that middle road, and I think a lot of people are who would actually care enough to listen to this. So, Dana White, I think you've overstayed your welcome, and I want to preface this by saying that anybody who speaks out against Dana White has to acknowledge what he has done for the sport, and I certainly do that. Dana White is kind of like Hoist Gracie. He was a necessity at the time, but now he's kind of overstayed his welcome and he needs to kind of walk away from the sport for the good of the sport. It's not an easy thing to say that because he definitely did. He definitely was a big part of turning the UFC around. It kind of went during its dark ages, I guess, the pre Forrest Griffin Bonner fight, but that kind of era. But there's a time and a place for those strong arm tactics. I can think of a couple analogies, metaphors here. The first is the Hoist Gracie metaphor. The second is kind of a weird, like when you go out and you want to date somebody, you want to find a girl who's relatable, who's down to earth. You know, there are some qualities you're looking for, but there's a point where there's a difference between dating a girl who gets along with your friends and dating a girl who's one of the guys. And I personally think a lot of people don't want to date a girl who's, you know, one of the guys. It's like you advertise yourself as, hey, I'm just like one of the guys. Well, I don't want to date one of the guys. You know, I want to date a woman. You know, it's kind of like that with Dana White in that there was a point where it was really cool to have one of the guy at the head of a large organization and calling the shots, and that was a refreshing change, especially for a sports league. When you kind of think of sports leagues, you think of these old white guys sitting at the top of a skybox and clinking his glass if his team wins. You know, it's there are a few exceptions today. Obviously, we definitely have a younger. This is an era of younger generations kicking in, but that's still, at the time, that was a rare thing when Dana White came along. So it was really a welcomed. It was like, wow, we've got our own sports league now, so let's get behind this. But yeah, now it's like there's a point where you want to hang out with that guy, but you don't really want to date that one of the guy's girls because that's a little weird, and it's gotten to the point where the UFC is big enough now, be it since the Fox transition or whatever, that you don't really want that kind of guy at the head of the UFC. You need somebody who's going to be able to consistently dole out, whether it's discipline for the fighters or not to be involved in gambling issues to the point that you get kicked out of your casino and then you pull your league out of that casino like a kid taking his toys and going home. That's not even adult behavior. That's that's not the kind of behavior we want for the UFC. It's people like to badmouth the Fertitta brothers, but at the end of the day, you don't really see them going out and throwing the F word around at press conferences, and you don't see them, uh, you know, at the casino floor, throwing around the cash and everything. That's something they're businessmen. They that's the kind of people we need at the head of the UFC. We don't need Dana White with his frat boy. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. Personality in the UFC anymore. It's worn out. It's welcome, and he's inconsistent when he needs to be consistent. And there was just a recent article that was published. I think it was, I don't know if it was Bloody Elbow or MMA Fighting, but they mentioned how he always sells a pay-per-view as, this is the most stacked card ever, and that's true. He always says that, and that's definitely something that, there are some UFC things that need to go, and it didn't end with getting rid of the Gladiator intro, okay? There's still some more. It's definitely getting better, but Dana White has to go, and so I've done two of the three metaphors here. The first being the Hoist Gracie, the second being the girlfriend, and the third one refers more to his early days. Like in the early days, I remember not like early era Sherdog, but kind of that maybe Lieben Anderson Silva fight era Sherdog. I can recall some people throwing around the word Suge White, that term Suge White, which is a reference to the rap mogul CEO of Death Row Records, Suge Knight, who was well known for his very strong arm tactics, and that was something we needed at the time to reiterate from Mr. White. But now, I'm just going to keep repeating myself, I guess. Here, the point here is that somebody else needs to come in and steer the UFC with more of a consistency. I can commend that he's starting to crack down on fighters for their sentiments on Twitter, and I can even commend that he's thinking of that the UFC wants to instill uniforms. I'm not completely against that. A professional league needs to have that kind of consistency. There has to be that kind of standard and professionalism there. But he's just very inconsistent, but it's just that he's inconsistent when it comes to things like title shots and how he disciplines fighters, maybe who he gives the bonuses to, especially the title shots. Man, saying Gina Carano deserves a title shot, okay, that makes everybody roll their eyes. She does not deserve a title shot. She's not going to be significant anymore in women's MMA. I'm sorry. That's just the truth. You're doing that for money. That's. I don't know if that's a Wolf Tickets thing, but that's not. She's no longer relevant. I'm sorry. She's not. And doing things like throwing title shots around, it devalues the belt. It devalues the belt. It devalues the entire organization. And, one of the biggest problems with the UFC is the lack of organization within the organization. It's like guys on the regular are encountering problems that should be, commonplace, common knowledge within the organization, whether it's the attire or who gets tested who for what, or fighter salaries or sponsorships, or how many fights is my contract under. It's like guys are coming out and saying, I never signed this fight. Why is it being promoted? Guys are coming out and saying, I had no word of this and no word of that. It's like, I don't know if it's just because these fighters are spread all over the place, but the first thing I would do with an organization is sit everybody the hell down and say, this is welcome to the organization. This is what the hell we're going to do. And I would do that like every 4 to 6 months or something. I don't care if it's like 150 guys on the roster, fucking Skype or something. I don't, have everybody be on the same page. Why does it feel like the UFC, in the UFC, all the fighters are not on the same page? You know, that's a very big problem that Dana White has almost been using as an excuse to get out of his own, you know, mishappenings or whatever, whether it's GSP or there was a article recently. Again, I'm sorry, I don't remember who published it. I think it was MMA Fighting this time, but they mentioned that Dana White said, "I have no contact with Dominic Cruz, but he gets a title shot whenever he wants." You know, that like that kind of thing. Like, Dominic should, yeah, he should reach out to him, but the boss is the one who's supposed to be in touch with his employees. At the end of the day, that's you're the one. If you're paying them, they're on your payroll. You want to know what the hell they're doing. I mean, how is it that he has had no communication, almost no communication with Dominic Cruz? What, that doesn't even make sense. And he's the top guy in that division. Henan Barrow is obviously the top guy, but you know, the point I'm making is that is baffling. That should never happen. You should be sitting down and have a mandatory, everybody sit the fuck down and let's talk about shit and get stuff done. You know, it's mind-boggling that there would be, like in the NFL, they know they have to tuck their damn shirts in. They know they can't take their helmet off while they're on the field, you know? These are all that's the kind of level the UFC needs to be at. They should know they can't wear this. They should know they need to be tested for that or whatever. I mean, the UFC really should be taking, you know, those kind of steps. And what they're doing is they're kind of just like addressing things as they come at them. You know, they're like crossing that bridge when they come to it, and that's not the kind of way that an organization can flourish. You know, have all of your guys on the same goddamn page, for fuck's sake. That's all I ask, UFC. That's all I ask, really, you know? And some guys are complaining like, oh, I'm on the undercard. Why am I on the undercard? Why am I not fighting for the title? Why is there no communication in the UFC? Why is there not a department of sit the fuck down with the fighters and tell this is what the fuck's gonna happen, you know? You're going to be doing this at this point in time, and if this happens, this is going to happen, you know? Why is there no indication of that occurring in the UFC? This is another thing I hold Dana White responsible for. Dana, I'm sure you're a great human being, you know? I'm not going to question your character, you know? I'm just saying that it's time to let somebody take over the UFC. Thank you for your time, your commitment, and service to the company, but we have to let you go. Thank you. You can get a lollipop on the way out.